What is up, everyone? It is Tuesday, and I am joined by Kyler Bird and Troy Honecker for our Tuesday night live stream. We're going to be previewing the Thursday game. So if you were in here for the last Thursday's live stream where we previewed the Sunday, today's show is going to format much like that, but we're doing it on a Tuesday night because we have Thursday night football, which is always interesting. But before we get into all that, Kyler, it's been forever, my friend. It's good to see you. It feels like you're growing the beard in a little more. I feel a kinship with you. Troy's trying to grow one. I think he'll maybe get there, maybe not. But
it's about as thick as it gets, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is about as filled in as it's gonna get, unfortunately, too. So it's good to be back. I know I've been gone for a little bit, but life is crazy even during football season. But very glad to be here. We've obviously got a lot to talk about with a struggling team like this. So just glad to be back. It's good to talk about it again.
Yeah, for sure. Good to have you back. Troy is becoming part of the family here, a regular, doing such a great job working with us. Troy, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I've come off the emotional low that was Sunday. Kind of ready to clear head, and I'm kind of happy for Thursday night just to kind of get going and get it over with. So I have more wounds to talk about, I'm sure. But
I mean, listen, this was, we talked about going into the game. We've talked about after, like, this was, Sunday was the worst case scenario, really, aside from more devastating. We had some pretty bad injuries. So even you could argue that, but like, to go against, a defense that was 32nd and put up 3 offensive points. I mean, that was a worst case scenario. So now we're facing a game that feels like it truly is a make or break game for the season. Like, we talked about, was that last game a must win? We kind of said statistically or mathematically, no, but they needed the momentum. They needed to, kind of take the next step, and they didn't. They took a step backwards. They regressed. This game coming up, which we will get into, feels like this really is the make or break. It feels like if they lose this game, it really feels like the season's over. I know mathematically it technically isn't. We're only one game back in the division. There's a lot of parity in the league, yet this, where, being in a whole 2-5 is bad. And I know you were talking about that on Twitter, Kyler, put you on the spot. Can you talk a little bit about how dire that situation is in terms of playoff odds and things?
Yeah, I've been having a lot of Twitter combos about that. And that tweet took off a little bit too, because I just don't think a lot of fans, the very optimistic ones, almost the too optimistic ones, see the hole that 2-4 is. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, like the much bandied about 1-2 numbers. Mm-hmm. If you go 1-2 to start the season, then you have like a 12% chance at the playoffs. But if you go 2-4, I know it's lower than 12%. But that just means 7-4 or 8-3 the rest of the way. There isn't wiggle room for the Cardinals the rest of the season. And especially this last Seattle game. Of course, mathematically, it wasn't a must win. But as far as division games go, it absolutely is. Because we are already 0-2 in the division. It's a long, long road to win that division. And yes, Washington has fairly recently won the NFC East at like 7-9. Everyone remembers that year. Mm-hmm. Like, it happens, and the NFC West does look a lot weaker than we're used to. The NFC as a whole looks awful. The NFC is not a good conference this year, top to bottom. So you were talking about parity. Well, it's parity at the bottom. There's a lot of bad football going on. Even Tom Brady's talked about there's been a lot of bad football being played. But 2-4 is ridiculously hard to come back from when you know that mistakes aren't possible. And for a team that had higher expectations, and the problems that we're seeing on the field don't seem like talent problems, they seem like mental problems. And if you're already a team with some type of mental weakness and you have no margin for error, you're setting yourself up for a lot of pain. You're setting yourself up for a make or break game in week 7. And that's a really, really bad spot to be in. But I would agree that this Thursday night game, if you lose and go 2-5, you pretty much need to start thinking about next year.
Yeah, and and real quick, like the NFC East is going to probably get 2 wild cards coming out of that division.
They're the strongest one in the conference somehow.
Yeah. So as it's trending, you would expect 2 wild cards coming out of there. Green Bay, if they, if Minnesota continues to hold on, I would anticipate, even though they're struggling, I think they'll get it right. And so, like, the point I'm going at with this is your only chances to win the division if you're playing that, if you're at 2-4 and you get to 2-5, I mean, you just have to hope that the NFC West becomes, what the NFC East was a couple years ago, and that you somehow can win the division with 7 or 8 wins, right? That's your only hope for the playoffs. If realistic hope if you lose this game, right?
And even if you get those 8 wins, you still stand a very, very good chance at not making the playoffs unless you go 4-0 the rest of the NFC West. Yeah. You have to win the rest of the games. You have to sweep the 49ers. You have to split with Seattle and LA. There's no other option there if you're trying to win the division, make the playoffs. There isn't margin for error. The best case scenario is you don't lose a game again. Yeah. And I don't know a single realistic fan who can see that happening with a team that's looked the way this team has looked. Yeah. So it's when you actually look at it and not just go, we're going to get him next week. And, Marquise is only out 6 weeks, which is great news. I'm glad to hear that he's not severely injured. That's great for us as a team and him as a human being. But
I'm sorry, good.
You just have to win. And I don't know that they can.
I'm going to real quick just say hey to the folks in the chat, and then we'll get Troy in on the conversation. Arizona Cardinals are here. What's up? I'm so glad to have you here, Arizona Cardinals. Arthur, hello. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. Robert Moore, a writer for AZ Sports Underground. Great, also active member of the Discord. Link for the Discord is below if you aren't part of that. Van the Man, hello. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Ancient 47, what's up? Jordan P is noting that in terms of he feels like most Cardinals fans are completely pessimistic right now. I mean, there's more pessimism, no doubt, but
absolutely
those that are optimistic, I think, though they may be the minority right now, is I think who Kyler was referring to. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more pessimism, and maybe some of it's gone too far. But I do think some being down right now is warranted in terms of how they've played, but. Yeah. Mark Jackson, I'm not a happy fan. I feel that. Appreciate Mark Jackson. Also another writer at AZ Sports Underground and active member of the Discord. We got Aaron Guzman. Thank you for being here. I agree. If the Cardinals lose on Thursday, it's going to be hard as hell to fight the whole year to make the playoffs, right? 100%. Tony Height is here. Thank you for being here, Tony. Appreciate Tony. Great support of the channel. Great dude to follow on Twitter. John Doe, Sue Homie. Appreciate you being here. We got Jackie. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out with Jackie. With us, Jackie. Another great writer for AZ Sports Underground. One of my co-hosts for the post game show has the Red Zone Redbird podcast. That's a lot of fun. Definitely check them out for sure. We got Marcus Langoni. Sorry. We don't have any margin for error. The offense focuses on one-on-one matchups and plays straight up. Once you figure out how to stop it, it's more difficult to get the ball in the end zone for sure. So Troy, in general, kind of what are your thoughts in terms of, the playoff? It's playoffs. Yeah. But exactly, in terms of where we are and what it means and what you're seeing in the NFC.
I mean, I think so. Yes, these statistics are obviously very alarming and could be very damning. Again, if we go 2-5, but again, this year is a very weird year with the NFC. Again, there's a lot of parity. The only teams that are pulling away are the Vikings and Giants, which is the Giants is very alarming. Which I think they're kind of the BS team. I think they're not quite good as 5-1. So yeah, we definitely don't get the 2-5 spot. But again, if you just look at last year, 49ers were 3-5. We just went out there and beat them. We thought they were dead to rights, and then they came storming back and pushed all the way, to make it to the NFC conference finals. And it's funny because sometimes these statistics, we're a team like that defies them, because I think like last year, I don't know what week, but like we had like an 80% chance to clinch the division. And we were like the one team to break that model and just completely throw it away. So again, I'm not looking too optimistic. I mean, I almost feel like at this point that not making the playoffs might be better for us in the long term. I don't know. There's some different ways to perceive that. But I think Thursday is going to be an interesting one. Again, it can't get any worse than it is. I think if we get towards the end and we're still fighting around, hanging in there, D-Hop, Robbie Anderson, and Hollywood makes for very, very interesting and fun wide receiver trio. So if we can hang around and hold on there, and then Rondale. But if you have Rondale and Hollywood kind of swapping in and out and just terrorizing that slot and doing some interesting things, again, who knows who'll be the head coach at that point in time once we get to there. But it's an interesting proposition, and I guess we just got to do one step at a time at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, I want to say, hey, real quick to Greg Hanlon talking about basically saying we trade for a receiver, but why didn't we do anything about the offensive line? Crickets. I think they're hoping Cody Ford will be back soon, but wonder, maybe they should be making a move. Hey, Kyle Ledbetter, thanks for being here. Appreciate you jumping in here. Hello, good evening, Professor. Thanks for hanging out with us. Good to see you, Kyle. A really good dude. So there's some things to be concerned with there. It's looking dire, as you said, you have to wonder is if they lose this game, is it just better to take a reset, and look at next year? But man, I'll tell you, if that receiving core, if we can just get them all back and healthy, if we can stay in it to the stretch run, that's a scary receiving core. If Robbie Anderson is your number 3, it's a really good receiving core. If if AJ Green is your number 5, and I know he's been down, but and then, Greg Dortch, they need to get him back in the game plan, but we'll talk about that all more. So I want to kind of switch gears for a little bit. So when this last game happened, it was really frustrating, and we all, watched. Well, many of us saw the press conference, or some of us maybe some of you don't watch it, and it was textbook Cliff, and I did something fun because I needed to just cope, right? So I put together, out of fun, a Cliff bingo card, and I sent this out on Twitter, so maybe you saw it. And it's just all the kinds of things that we're tired of hearing him say. You got to give them credit is one of the boxes. We'll keep working at it. We need to find a way to win. He's day to day. So I tweeted this out for fun, and people enjoyed it. And then the next morning, I had a couple of reactions. So I tweeted it out, and then one Vince Murata, who I've been listening to for a long time, tweeted really nicely, well done, Joe. Also check out YouTube video. Nice work. So that was that made my day. It's sweet, and then saw Sarah Cazell, who also is part of the Vince and whatever. What do they even call their show? Bickley and Murata.
Bickley Murata mornings.
Yeah. Yes, Bickley and Murata. I know the radio show, but I've listened. I remember listening to Bickley and reading his stuff, when I lived in Arizona, and that's been a while. And then Dan Bickley retweeted it. And then someone in Discord said, Joe, they're talking about your thing on the radio. And so I had to go back and listen to it, because I have to listen to it streaming, here in Georgia. But so that was, for me, that was fun. This thing I did, the tweet just kind of, it's been retweeted a couple hundred times or whatever, or over 100 times. And anyway, so that was fun, but people seem to enjoy that. So that was kind of cool. Just for me, that was kind of a cool moment. But I tweeted out something else I think will help us segue into the game, because Thursday night football has been rough. And it felt like the Cardinals played like a Thursday night football team, except last Sunday. So I sent out this tweet. I have a bad feeling that the Arizona Cardinals are going to be the most Thursday night football team that ever Thursday nighted. And I think that kind of leads into our preview of Thursday night football, right? Because those games are bad in general. And so are the Cardinals going to score 2 points? Is this is that how do you how do you get more Thursday night than what they did on Sunday? Or is there some bizarro kind of reversal where they're going to actually somehow put up points? I mean, I don't know. Troy, we'll let you get started. What do you? We'll get into the specific details of the matchup, but like, what do you think going into Thursday? You think it's gonna be worse, or I mean, in general, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I don't think it's physically possible to get any worse than Sunday. I was thinking kind of about. I know we're all very down on Sunday, and I was equally as frustrated. But after I kind of got off the cliff and started thinking for a while, I was thinking how the 31st defense is slightly misleading for us in a sense that we face Seattle 2 times every year. Like, they know us much more than any other team that they're facing, so they have a unique kind of insight to us. So I think that makes it not hurt quite as bad. I mean, it still sucks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not totally giving them a pass, but like I feel like because division matchups always get weird. Again, talk about the Seattle Cardinals game 6-6, and like some crazy, terrible game. And again, it's almost like for people that watch like soccer, Premier League soccer, they call the derbies, which is like the clubs, like the big rivals, and it's like form goes out of it. It's just a brawl every time. And I feel like it's kind of like that with us in Seattle and us in the 49ers, for instance. I mean, we seem to have the Niners kind of number in a sense, which is surprising. Especially given the fact we usually wilt against very physical teams, but I don't know, we do well against them. So yeah, Thursday though, again, it can't get any worse. I don't know. I feel like we're all hoping D-Hop comes and saves things, and I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, I think it's going to be more of the same. It's a weird game. We have the black uniforms, the black helmets. Again, the hometown curse hanging over us. I'm not super optimistic. Saints kind of got robbed. Not robbed, but they got a kind of crushing loss against the Bengals last week. They're going to come in and pissed off. I don't know. I'm just trying to keep my emotions down so I'm not, having another Sunday experience again.
Yeah, I hear. Real quick, I want to say hey to Nick. Thanks for being here. John Ross came in for workout. I didn't see that. Okay. Speedster, who hasn't really panned out. We got Everjay. Thanks for being here. Greg Dortch seems to be playing more than Rondale Moore. I think they both need to. I know people are down on Rondale Moore. I'm a believer in the talent, but I think they need to both be playing. They need Greg Dortch in there more for sure, though. The Catalog, thanks for being here. Let's hope Ford can help this O-line. Not here's hoping, right? Michael Onak, thanks for being here. Put Dortch back in. I'm not impressed with Rondale Moore. Again, I think play them both, but you definitely need to see Dortch more for sure.
Yeah.
We got Evan. What's up, fellas? Appreciate you hanging out with us. Thanks for being here. So Kyler, how do you feel about Thursday in general?
I'm scared. If we lose this, we have not won a home game in a calendar year.
Oof.
That is one, hard to believe, but also just in a comparison between the two organizations, the Saints seem like a well-run organization most of the time. They've had pretty sustained success, and a lot of that was with Drew Brees and Sean Payton, neither of whom are there anymore. But yet, organizationally, you still expect success out of the Saints just because of who they are. Similar to the Baltimore Ravens. They're just always the Ravens. In a weird fluke year, they might win the Super Bowl. The rest of the years, they're going to win 8 to 11 games. And that's just who they are as an organization. And something just feels a little sick in the Cardinals organization, franchise as a whole. And you just don't expect that. I know we're all traumatized as fans because we've had such awful seasons before. And I don't think it's 2018 all over again. But there is that element of, oh my gosh, what is wrong with the root of this franchise right now when you're watching the games on Sunday? And this team, this roster, is light years ahead of that 2018 roster. On paper, you compare those two teams, 2018 was bad.
Yeah.
A huge failure on Keim's part to put a team together. It was awful. And players that we have this year are good for the most part, and defense is really playing out of their minds when you look at the roster on the defensive side of the ball, and the fact that I think we're 30th or 31st in defensive spending, and they and Vance Joseph, they're the MVPs right now. They're keeping us in the game, which that's an organizational failure when you have an offensive coach and your offense is stacked and it's the worst part of your team.
Yeah.
And it's the team that's losing you games when your defense, who is underpaid and lower level names, is keeping you in it. Something's seriously sick in the organization when something is going on like that. But at the end, you have 2-4 teams. The Saints aren't doing great right now, but when you look at them play, you're seeing a couple breaks go wrong, and they're 2-4. So an unfortunate season for them. But they don't feel sick the same way the Cardinals feel sick. And I'm just scared of the haunting Thursday night Broncos game from 2018, 45-10. Mike McCoy gets fired the next day. It feels off to me, and I honestly am not expecting that much. And like Troy said, I'm not expecting DeAndre Hopkins to come in and save the franchise in one game.
Well, and and to your point, it's gotten bad. And Robert mentions there was an interview, and Cliff was asked if he would ever consider giving up play calling duties. In the past, that's kind of been like, no, and that he wouldn't do that. And he expressed that whatever it takes to win, right? Anything to win. It's so whether he's really open to that, or he was just saying that to say that. I mean, I know, like, you brought him in here to be your offensive coach. You figure he should call up the plays, but I'm more open to that being maybe the right answer, at least if we're going to keep him, I should say, because the thing I've always contended is his play design is good. I know some people don't believe that, but he does a good job play designing. The problem I have with Cliff is just every once in a while that, the jet sweep to run him more on fourth down, right? That epitomizes the problem. That just sometimes he tries to get too cute.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times, I actually think the plays he calls are good. So maybe if he's designing the plays and they're good plays and they have the players, and you have someone who's just going to do a better job with the sequencing and what you call. So maybe, but something, yeah, you're right. Something about this team just feels like if it isn't all working, they can't win. Where other teams, if it's not all working, they can win. It feels like. Yeah, true.
I think that Cliff interview, that's kind of a big red flag that I'm surprised not people are talking about as much, because if you go back, I think it was a year, maybe 2 ago, he's on Scott Van Pelt and he's saying he's retiring if he's not allowed to call plays. And now he's saying he'll do anything. And like, you can kind of see him, like, or hear it in his voice. Like, his confidence is kind of just shot at the moment. And I don't love to get into the whole leadership, kind of thing, how people never liked Cliff because he wasn't like an alpha leader. I'm like, whatever, they're professional sports. These guys should know they don't need like an alpha stirring them on. But I think everyone needs a leader that has some sort of idea of where they're going. And when your head coach is kind of openly admitting, like, I don't know what's going wrong, like, or I don't know what's happening, like, that kind of trickles down. I mean, you're seeing Kyler doesn't look confident at the moment. He looks shot. He's one of the major problems so far this year. It's not just Cliff. It's Kyler's just playing terrible. His decision making is not good. So that's really damning. And the scarier part is, even if we do, like, he's our play caller, head coach, and like offensive coordinator. Like, if we were to get rid of him, who's picking up the slack on offense? Like, I would have zero confidence in anyone else stepping up. So
yeah.
I don't know. Like I said last time I was on, that if we lost to the Seattle defense and our offense is terrible, that'd be a red flag. Well, my red flag was already waving, and then hearing him say that, I'm double red flag waving. Like, this is not good. I mean, I think when you get a head coach and he is a play caller, then you take that away, it never ends well. Matt Nagy, they did that, like the Bill Lazor kind of thing. They had Bill Lazor call, or I don't know, he had another guy call plays. And then Nagy took it back, gone. The Cowboys, with Kellen Moore, who's still there, but it was, who was the old head coach for Dallas? That is at the redheaded guy, Jason Garrett. Jason
Oh,
Garrett was
okay.
calling
Yeah.
play, gave it to Kellen Moore, and then he's fired. So it's whenever your head coach is a play caller and then now he's not a play caller, that's never a good thing.
Yeah. And I think whatever they do, they've got to do it in the off season. I'm not a believer in firing your coach mid-season. As bad as it might seem right now, I think it's going to be even tougher. So you have to give them a chance to try to get it right. And if they don't, then we got to talk about what's next this offseason. But speaking of what's next, I want to respect Kyler's got limited amount of time, so I want to respect this. So let's get into some of the stuff we're going to talk about previewing this game, right? So as we did last time, let's look at just some of the rankings. I'll just kind of I'll go through these to kind of paint the picture, and then we can each just kind of talk about what we think of the matchup in general. So DVOA rankings, if you're not familiar, this is Football Outsiders metric. And it's a general ranking of efficiency. I talked about this some last week. It takes into account like the situation. So it's situationally weighted. So if you want to read more about how they figure this, you can go to their website. But I think it's a pretty good general metric for looking at a team. And these are two teams that are at the bottom of the DVOA rankings. We're 29th, they're 26th, same with weighted. Offense, we're 26th, they're 18th, so they rank a little better on offense. Defense, we're 20th, which is a step up from where we were last week, actually. And they are 18th. Special teams were 26th and they're 31st. So in terms of DVOA, they rank a little bit better than us, more so on offense than defense, which is not surprising, I think. And then when you look at their offensive rankings, yards and points, we're 16th in yards, they're 6th. We're not actually terribly bad in yards. It's the points we're struggling with. We're 22nd and they're 12th. And then we look at defense. And we actually have an edge on them in terms of defense. We are ranked 12th in yards per game. They're 17th. We are ranked 22nd in points allowed a game. They're 29th. And obviously that 22nd is skewed by that week 1 game where we gave up 44 points, right? So we're probably much more towards the middle of a pack defense in terms of how we're playing right now. So with that kind of picture painted, and I'll kind of maybe take this back to DVOA. Kyler, what are your thoughts generally about this matchup?
Generally, this isn't a bad matchup. They are 2-4 teams, and their gap on these rankings isn't that wide. Nothing that would suggest one team is just significantly better than the other. They're pretty evenly matched as far as the numbers go. Their offense seems, just from watching their games, they have a little bit more spark. They have a couple playmakers that make the plays when they need them to. But also on paper, we should have the big advantage in quarterback. Kyler Murray's not really living up to expectations this year. But as far as like a talent metric goes, Kyler Murray's a more talented quarterback than what they have available in Andy Dalton, if he is going to play, or Jameis Winston. Same with receivers. We'll talk about in a little bit, but somehow after even the Hollywood Brown injury, we have a healthier, better wide receiver group than them. They're dealing with severe injuries to a lot of their key receivers. It's not a wide gap. If you are just looking at this, especially people that don't watch a lot of Saints or Cardinals games, seems like a pretty even matchup. Kind of disappointing 2-4 matchup on Thursday night again, but we might see some really bad football again on Thursday night.
I feel like I want to apologize to football fans across the country and around the world on behalf of the Cardinals, like for what we're about to show them on Thursday night. Right?
Oh, yeah. And Amazon, you just got gypped, man. You paid so much money for some of the worst football I have ever seen on Thursday nights.
Yeah, though Chris Olave, a guy who I love, listen to Mock Draft Mondays. Anyone who watched those, I picked him a lot. I really liked him coming out in the draft, and he's ended up looking like a really good receiver. Unfortunately, it's not enough for them, right? Real quick, let me just say hey to a couple people who jumped in here. We got AZ Cards Nerds. so please be nicer to people. We got Lalo. I'm extremely hopeful for us to beat the Saints. Our playoff odds will be cut in half if we lose. And also, I'll ask a question: should we trade for? There was word that William Jackson III was, on the trade block. No, I don't think so. I don't think we need a cornerback. I know we've been concerned about the cornerback plays actually been, the grades haven't been great for like Marco Wilson, but like Antonio Hamilton's back. He played really well. We've done a good job with cornerback. If
Byron Murphy's been playing out of his mind,
really playing really well, and if Mullen's getting healthy, cornerback, I just don't think we need to. I don't know
And Marco graded actually well against the Seattle game. I think he was in I think our highest graded corner or close to it. I mean, he's starting to come on pretty well, I think.
I tweeted out that was his third best individual PFF grade of his career and his best coverage game for any single game. So Marco had a really good game against a good receiving core. Also want to say hi to Level 7. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you hanging in. D-Hop is back, so we're back. Here's hoping, right? So yeah, Troy, what do you think about this matchup in general?
Yeah, just kind of a lot you guys were saying. It's just kind of a very even matchup, two very mediocre teams. I would say the Saints are probably more even. They're more steady, while we're the more higher variance. If you catch us on a good day, hold on. But if you catch us on a bad day, then we ain't fighting out a wet paper bag. But I think this Saints team, it's almost kind of the inverse of what we're used to. We're used to like really stout defensive play and kind of more conservative offense, where this year their defense is actually not very good, especially in their corners are like the worst ranked players on their team at the moment. With their linebackers and front seven being, pretty decent. And their offense is surprisingly, I want to say explosive, but they got a good consistent run game with Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill, which we did, as much as that Eagles game was frustrating, I thought we did a pretty good job limiting Hurts to I mean, it was just we got QB sneaked to death, God forbid. And I'll be curious to see how they match up. Again, Olave is kind of their only good wide receiver catching threat. Is Michael Thomas, is he back hurt again? I forget the saga of him. Yeah.
He's on the injury list.
He's on the injury list. All right. So, I think it's going to be another ugly game. But I think this should be a good game for maybe Kyler in the second, or Kyler in the wide receivers, to hopefully get into some groove. God forbid. We need a big game from him.
Yeah. Well, why don't we look at the injury reports, because some of the things that you have both talked about will kind of appear when we get to that. So let's start with the Cardinals injury report. Marquise Hollywood Brown, that was obviously the really one of the two pieces of bad news. At first it was feared he would be down for the season. Now it looks like he's going to be gone. I think did they put him on IR? I think they might have, or they're going to. He's going to miss, I think, at least 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. Might miss as many as 6 games, I think was the projection, but he should be back. James Conner, still not practicing. I think he's still iffy, but I would probably bet against him. Gardeck's a little banged up, but I think we'll see. He's been playing. Hudson don't know. He was kind of a game time decision, but he didn't practice today. Prater, we'll talk about what's going on with the kicking, but we're still not sure about him. Justin Pugh's down, gone for the season. That was bad news. Thompson's nursing something, but I think he'll be fine. Williams, I would expect to be out. Everyone else on this list should be available. But there's Marquise Hollywood Brown was a big loss. Justin Pugh's a big loss. And to respond to that, the Cardinals went out and made a trade. They traded for Robbie Anderson. So from Carolina, which gives us, I know we were all excited to see Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins, and that was going to be dynamic. And now what we've got is Robbie Anderson and DeAndre Hopkins, which is not a bad pairing, but it's not what we had hoped. Kyler, what are your thoughts? Any thoughts on the Cardinals injury report and or the trade for Robbie Anderson?
The injury report has just been depressing all season. We came into the season unhealthy, and it's really not getting that much better. And in the last game, the most insult to injury that you can get is to lose your left guard and your number one wide receiver. Now, we have D-Hop back, but he was the number one at the time. Yeah, just an awful way to end that awful game. Justin Pugh, I think, is a very underrated miss right here. I've defended Justin Pugh a long time. Anytime I hear Justin Pugh hate, I try to correct it because he plays well, and you notice when he is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the greatest compliments I think you can give an offensive lineman is when they're not there. That really hurts. Rodney Hudson, I'm not sure what the long-term injury situation is with him. But it's been disappointing to have him missing time as well. But when you miss both of them, you just have a huge gap in the interior of your offensive line. And you open yourself up to so much more interior pressure that you just don't think about when you think Justin Pugh and Rodney Hudson are out. That's a huge, huge part of the offense. And they're two very, very key parts of the offense. Offensive linemen love. You gotta respect them because they matter a lot. Yeah. James Conner, it's disappointing as well, just because of how productive he was last year. But Eno Benjamin can play football really well. And that first drive in Seattle looked beautiful. And then we never used it again. We threw it all away. Eno and Kyler Murray on the ground were fabulous. It ended in 3 points, but they looked great, and we never did it again. Anyway, that's another thing. But I understand why we went for Robbie Anderson. I mean, he's obviously available after the sideline fight with Steve Wilkes. He was not the Carolina Panther that I was hoping we would trade for. They have some talented guys on that team, and everyone in the league's kind of hoping there's going to be a fire sale in Carolina, and you can get some good guys out of it. But overall, I think it's a good move because Robbie Anderson, he's never had good quarterback play in his entire career. He's been one of those receivers kind of cursed with very, very mediocre quarterbacks. And he still managed to pull out some good seasons, especially 2020. And he's 6'3" and runs like a 4.3. That's awesome. That's amazing. And like D-Hop said in his press conference today, you can't teach that type of speed, which is very true. And I think giving Kyler taller, bigger weapons is a good thing. AJ Green playing at whatever this low level he is at this point in his career has been bad. And then also missing Antoine Wesley with injury. The average height of our receivers is like 5'9".
Yeah.
Through the first 6 weeks of the season without D-Hop out there. So now you're going to have a situation with Hopkins, I think he's 6'1", Robbie Anderson 6'3", and then you have the Rondell Moores and the Greg Dortches, which are a little bit on the smaller side. But you've added some size and some really good speed. I think it's a good move, and I think it's one that needed to be done with the Marquise Brown injury.
Yeah, before I throw it to you, Troy, I just want to mention there was another move, and Bobby Morris mentioning Amendola out and Rex Specs. Rodrigo Blankenship, the kicker we all really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They cut Amendola and they signed Blankenship. I believe he's technically on the practice squad. They'll probably elevate him if Prater's not ready, they will. So he's on. But there was a great tweet from Kemi, who I wanted to throw a shout out to. Great support of the channel. Did a Photoshop of what he sees, an angelic figure who is also a unicorn, right? Rodrigo Blankenship before they signed him, might have been the most popular kicker in Arizona Cardinals history who wasn't an Arizona Cardinal up until recently, right? Like everyone wanted him. And this is how many of us felt, but we got him. So here's hoping he's going to be better than what we experienced with Matt Amendola. Troy, what are your thoughts on the injuries? Anything stand out or anything you want to comment on that?
Well, I'm just going to say I want to take the L when I said Rodney Hudson was trending down and we didn't need him anymore. That was a grave mistake and a horrible lie because Sean Harlow did exactly what we thought he was going to do and just completely folded on Sunday, which was really unfortunate. And then Justin Pugh went out. I mean, again, I know our offense looked bad, but like Kyler wasn't playing well, but he also didn't have much help in terms. I mean, he was under assault like every snap. And once again, some of the frustrations with Cliff is like, it seemed like there was no, like, have we ran like one slant all year? Any kind of quick hitting middle of the field throw? I feel like that was like D-Hop's thing. And we have like no one has filled that role. And it's like, even that some of the fourth down stuff on the 4th and 2 and 3, like nothing's quick. It's all long developing plays. And why are we doing that when our offensive line is getting eaten alive? Again, Cliff Kingsbury stuff. Yeah, so we need Rodney back because, well, I guess that interior of the Saints isn't like elite. I mean, it's more of the ends that are really great with, Cam Jordan and Davenport. But yeah, so I think we'll be riding the Eno train again because I think that's going to be important. And I'm curious about this. This wide receiver core is going to look. I have a special place in my heart for Robbie Anderson because I'm in fantasy a couple of years ago and he was like surprisingly pretty good. So I've always, and of course that Sir Purr video is like one of the funniest things in forever. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure I do.
So it's a clip where he's on the sideline. He's talking to DJ Moore. And it's COVID year, but he sees the Panthers mascot way up in the stands and he's like, "What is that?" And he's like, what is that bear doing up there? And DJ Moore's looking at him. He's like, "It's our mascot. He's a panther. His name's Sir Purr." He's like, "Sir Purr? That's what you call him?" Because he has like this thick Southern accent. It's hilarious.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. But no, I think the height is something we desperately need. Again, I think Derek Klassen, again, Football Outsiders, was kind of going on a Twitter rant about the Cardinals and condemning Keim. He's like, Kyler's good, but like, with this height being an issue, why would you surround him with wide receivers who average height is like 5'9"? Like that just seems silly. And I think we've been seeing it because AJ Green's are only tall. AJ and Zach Ertz are only tall guys, and they're both old. And like Ertz has been great, but again, he's winning purely just on like possession and kind of quick hits. AJ Green just has not been the same guy. So I think Robbie Anderson will be great. Again, he'll stretch the field a bit. And I think I saw a comment earlier from Jordan P. It's giving off kind of Nuke Will Fuller vibes, which that was a very successful offense in the Texans. So hopefully we get a little bit of that action going,
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I see it. Yeah, because Fuller obviously a speedster on the outside, so hopefully they can work well. Our buddy Aaron Van Buren, thanks for dropping in here, does not believe. Thanks for hanging out with us, Aaron. He sees Robbie Anderson as Dre Kirkpatrick wide receivers. I think he's a little better than that. But I think Robbie Anderson is, if he's your number 3, you have a heck of a receiving core.
Mm-hmm.
If he's your number 1, you have a bad receiving core. If he's your number 2, you have an average receiving core. That's kind of how I look at it. Right now, he's going to be our number 2, but at some point, he's going to be our number 3. So I like it. I think what they gave up for him, a 6th and a 7th round pick, those are negligible, especially, we're getting compensatory picks this next year. And he's costing us, less than $1 million, like less than 700,000 in terms of against the cap. So I think it was a low risk. Robert Holmes, thanks for being here. Sean Payton Murray, good. Do it so mad at Cliff. Okay, so you want Sean, or you want Sean Payton. Okay. So we got Paul G. Thanks for being here. Hi, late to the party. I was working on the Cardinals forum game day thread. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. So okay, let's look, and we'll come back to some of those players when we get to some of the other matchup stuff. Let's look at the Saints injury report. So players that did not practice for them. A couple other receivers, Keith Kirkwood, Jarvis Landry, cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. That is a big one, and he's not expected to play, is my understanding. Guard Andres Pete didn't practice. So I don't know if he might not play. I had him on their offensive line. We'll talk about them later. Michael Thomas didn't practice. He's out right now. Adam Troutman, tight end. Then they had some limited players. Another cornerback, Paulson Adebo. Andy Dalton's limited. Mark Ingram's limited. Marcus May practice fully for them, safety. Ryan Ramczyk limited, Calvin Throckmorton guard limited, Peyton Turner edge limited, and Jameis Winston limited. And we're not sure who's going to start at quarterback. So we'll have to see. But what are your thoughts on the injury report? Anything stand out for you, Kyler?
They're banged up too. There's no way around that. They've got key players out. So using our injury report as an excuse for what's about to go down on Thursday, it doesn't play out here. The Saints are suffering, and they've got obviously some really big names here. Their number one wide receiver is going to come down to their rookie Chris Olave, who's great. He's looked really good so far this year, but Jarvis Landry gone. Michael Thomas seems like he hasn't played in a decade. And you don't even know who your starting quarterback's going to be. So the Saints are suffering. They've got their unknowns too. Marshawn Lattimore might be the biggest impact on our game. He is a playmaker, and not having him out there does present a little bit of a hole in that secondary. But Kyler Murray hasn't looked like he can take advantage of those types of matchups this year. So how much that benefits us in the end, I don't know. But that is good for us. He is out. I have seen that. He's out. Mm-hmm. And we'll see. Marcus May is dealing with some stuff, but he's going to play. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That you can't say that one team was healthy, so that's why they beat us. This is, like we were saying before, this is about as even as a matchup as you can get at this point in the season. Not just record and how you're playing, but also how injured you are. So I think we're both in the bottom 10 of the healthiest NFL teams. So we'll see what happens.
Real quick, Robert Holmes asked if we saw what Antonio Brown said about our chairman Twitter. Yes, I did.
I did.
He has problems. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, it was obviously utterly offensive, and dude has problems. But I want to thank Grandizer, who's a great supporter. Appreciate him. He's constantly, a supporter of channels, putting reminders in the chat, and a really good dude, and has helped connect me with content creators from other teams for collabs. I just want to say thank you and say hey to him. Troy, injury report. Is there anything that stands out to you when you look at this?
I mean, just kind of what Kyler was saying. I think the Lattimore is the biggest miss for them. Again, Saints secondary has been kind of subpar this whole season. Justin Jefferson had a day against them. Jamar Chase had a day against them. They're vulnerable there. And with D-Hop back, you got an alpha. You got a guy who can take advantage of that. So let's see if, again, Kyler is going to be the key, as he should be. So this is up to him. And, if he has a really good game and lights it out on primetime football, and could really, I think, take a good step in kind of rehabilitating his image at the moment. And if he just takes over like he did the Raiders again, I think that's the key to it at the end of the day. I mean, unfortunately, we're not going to win on the back on Eno. We're going to have to win with Kyler's arm.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like you both said, Marshawn Lattimore is the big miss here. Not having the receivers healthy. I mean, for however banged up the Cardinals are, we can't use it. Certainly can't use that as an excuse, because this is set up to this is and should be a winnable game if we get things straight. If we don't, it won't be, right? Robert, thank you for that. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Thanks for the kind words. We got the Carolina Crown. Why has Keim not tried to get offensive linemen? The left side is vulnerable. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think he's hoping to get some people back, but who knows? Maybe a trade's on its way. But I don't know. That's a good question. I think that's what a lot of people, we got a right wide receiver. I like the receiver trade. But a lot of people are saying, well, okay, but what about offensive line, right? So let's real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're kind of running a little long. Looking at the quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, we all know what he's done. He's not having a great year. These are the numbers he's put up. He had 100 yards rushing this last game, but it's he's not having a great game. We don't know who's going to be playing quarterback. I anticipate Andy Dalton, or I should say, I think he's the more likely but it could be Winston. He's actually played well. He's a veteran. It's hit or miss with Andy though. He could be up or down, but he's a veteran, knows what he's doing, and he's graded pretty well. So we can't take their quarterback situation we can't treat it like it's a undrafted rookie. This is a veteran. He has bad games sometimes, but he knows what he's doing. So let's look though at the matchups in terms of, and this is where you were talking about that left side of the line. We don't know what's going on in terms of center for sure, right? Whether Hudson's going to be back, but I went with, I guess, what is maybe the more worst case scenario here, but a realistic likelihood: Harlow at center and Garcia at left guard. Maybe they put Josh Jones in there at guard, which is not his ideal spot. They might, but I think it's more likely they'll go with Garcia if he's healthy. Maybe we see Billy Price. Maybe we're very lucky in seeing Hudson. But this is the matchups of the offensive line versus the pass rushers. Got some defensive interior and then the edge rushers. Kyler, thoughts on what you see with these matchups?
I think this part of the Saints defense is their strongest. They're definitely very decent up front. I'm probably going to talk in a little bit more about Cam Jordan, but he's a force and he has been for a long time in the league. You have to take him seriously. But even on the interior, Onyemata's been playing pretty well, even minus the grades that you see there. He makes an impact on the field for sure. And when you're going up against an interior that is just struggling, and now without Justin Pugh, and I would say it's highly unlikely Rodney Hudson's playing, just give Billy Price a chance. Sean Harlow is not the guy at center. I would even prefer Max Garcia doing center like he did last year than Sean Harlow. I don't know that I've seen a PFF grade lower than that, a 27.9 pass block. And Kyler Murray was not getting help on Sunday. I think there were 16 hurries in that game. And yes, like you said, they were miscalling the situations of the game because they were calling these plays to take 3 or 4 seconds to develop with a line that cannot handle it. But they weren't doing him any favors. So Billy Price is at least worth a shot there. This is the best matchup for the Saints, I think. This front seven against a really, really weak O-line. It's scary. I don't think Kyler's going to have a ton of time to throw.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Landon. Landon's saying O-line issues are scary. Play calling's been so spotty. Screen game's a joke. Jet sweeps, motion plays, atrocious. Quick hits, otherwise non-existent. Cliff is failing. So, yeah. Thanks for being here, hanging out with us, Landon. Yeah, so that offensive line, that's the concern, right? And as Jordan's talking about, Harlow and Garcia tandem is the worst in football. I mean, I know it's easy to sit back and say things as kind of a armchair kind of coach or GM, but why don't you throw Billy Price there? I know you have to kind of learn the systems or whatever, but he's been playing center since college. I know he's had up and down NFL career, but I can't imagine he'd be worse than Harlow. Or if it is about the system, like you said, scoot Garcia over. I know we all hated Garcia at center last year, and he wasn't great, but he was better than what we're seeing from Harlow.
Better than Harlow. Come on.
Yeah. Now the question is, then we have Lacita Smith. Give him a chance at guard. Get the rookie. I don't know. You got to try something. So, and then Mark is saying here he did make a trade for Cody Ford earlier, got hurt. Teams just don't trade O-linemen. Everyone has O-line issues outside of Philly. So and I get it's like people ask why haven't they traded for offensive linemen. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They might be trying, and maybe there isn't a good deal available. So that's the tough part, but something's got to be done. Troy, what any thoughts you want to add on this matchup?
I mean, just again, what kind of Kyler was saying, that left side of the line's brutal. Harlow's rough. I'm curious, is Billy Price that bad? I mean, Kugler's like one of our best coaches on the staff, so I kind of trust in him. And if he believes in, I mean, Harlow had a great game against the Eagles too, which is another good. I mean, that's one of the best front sevens we've faced, or at least the defensive line interiors we faced, and he had a great game on that one. So he's just very inconsistent, and I think we're just gonna have to write it out on the short week, because even then, if we throw a price in, it can't be. It's probably not gonna be good. Short week, new game plan and stuff. We're just gonna have to pray, and again, Cliff's gonna have to scheme around short hits, because that offensive line is probably not gonna hold out very long. And then we got some great edge rushers in Davenport and Cam Jordan. Humphreys has been good, but those guys are also really good. So our line's gonna have its work cut out for it, which is always a very scary thought. I pray to God Cody Ford is good for next week. They activated him off the IR today, I believe. So, dear God, please send us a line.
You gotta hope something gels. I'll tell you what, is if Rodney Hudson somehow plays this week, I already feel exponentially better. Like Garcia at guard, sure. I mean, he's not who you want, but like if it's this offensive line with Rodney Hudson at center, like, and people, kind of talk about this sometimes, how offensive line really do work as a unit. And like, you can have a weak link on offensive line surrounded by strong links, and it kind of levels out. The problem is we have a horrifically weak link next to each other, Garcia and Harlow. But like, if you plug, if you get, Hudson back in there, Garcia is a serviceable guard for a few games, right? It's this combination. So, Grandizers point out New Orleans versus AZ Cardinals history. Two teams have met each other 31 times, including one postseason game. Saints winning 16 games, Cardinals winning 15 games. Saints lead 16-15. So we talked about, it's interesting. It feels like an even matchup this game, but it's also historically an even matchup, which is really interesting. Let's look at the inverse. But yeah, I think you're right though. The interior scares me, even though it's their outside pass rush where it's strong. They have some decent people who can get home inside as well. Onyemata you mentioned, and Shai Tuttle is a player that they're trying to develop. So you worry about that. So the inverse here. Now Pete is on the injury report, so we're not even sure if he'll play. He didn't practice. I know I don't follow the Saints closely enough to know what's going on with him. But here we see their offensive line. Much better situation than our offensive line, I would say, especially in the middle. Even if Pete's out, you've got strength on either side of him, right? And then we have our edge rushers. Now, I have Dimikaji up there instead of, Devin Kennard was released. I believe he's now on the Ravens practice squad. And I put Dimikaji in there because he has the next highest number of snaps of our edge rushers. But obviously we've got the two rookies that had, both got their first sack that we're excited about. So Kyler, take a look at this matchup and tell me what stands out to you, or any thoughts in terms of our defensive front versus the offensive line of the Saints.
Yeah, I think we're going to see another situation where our edge rushers are just not as effective as we would want them to be. I know Marcus Golden has been a little bit disappointing this year. He really hasn't been. I'll amend that. He hasn't been finishing the sacks. He's there. You see him on the field, and he's doing his thing, and he's getting back there. He's just not finishing with sacks. Dennis Gardeck obviously was not going to be as effective as he was at 2020 year. That was an outlier in his career, and I know everyone wanted to believe in him because he's a big fan favorite, but he is not an elite talent at the NFL level. And you're going up against an offensive line that is truly blessed with elite tackles on either side. They have been for a long time. The Saints offensive line has always been pretty good. And organizationally, they put a big emphasis on doing that, and they protected Drew Brees for a long time. The inside, a little bit weaker. Obviously, Pete's, if he is going to play, he is a weak spot there. So, if anything, I see this as another chance for the Allen-Watt combination, which has been really surprisingly effective this year. We're not used to having interior pressure be the strength of the Cardinals front seven. We're so blessed with Chandler Jones for so long. that we just got used to outside linebacker being the pass rush position. But Watt and Allen have been remarkably effective. And any time that JJ Watt is healthy and on the field, he makes a big impact. And Lawrence, he was missed when he missed that game with his hand. And I think having him back, if he is going to be able to play, that's great. The strength of this front seven is definitely the defensive line right now. And I think they're going to have a little bit of an opportunity against the interior of the Saints as well.
Troy, what are your thoughts when you look at this?
No, I echo that completely. Saints have a good tackle play, so the edge rushers are going to be, probably not quite as effective as they were last week, which is, I'll say that's a W because I believe I said we could take advantage of the rookie tackles on Sunday, and we did. I mean, we had 5 sacks, and and the rookies were getting after it, so that was really exciting and fun to see. But yeah, it's gonna have to come from the interior. Zach Allen, JJ Watt gonna have to do their stuff, and we'll just disrupt this Saints running game and kind of throw. They do a lot of kind of read options and stuff, and maybe slower developing runs, and they have to get in there and mix it up because that's the Saints kind of bread and butter is Alvin Kamara, then doing some weird stuff with good old what's his name, Taysom Hill. There it is. So yeah. And Andy Dalton's got a couple interceptions in him. He's just holding on. He's holding on to it. So
he's saving them for us.
He's saving them for us. It reminded me of that Dallas game like 2 years ago when he was like doing great and then just fell apart against us.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're hoping for that.
For sure. Real quick, want to say hey to a couple people who jumped in here. Cy Cannon, we need to say OC. We talked about that earlier. If you go back and watch it, we talked about that. Want to say hey to Jay Murray, who's here. Paid the dog for what? Are you talking about the junkyard dog? He struggled, but for sure, right? So yeah, I think this is a tough match. This is a really tough matchup for us because they do have such a good offensive line. Ramczyk is a stud. Across the board, they're pretty good. Pete struggled, but like I said, you can have one weak link there. And our pass rushers have gotten better. They a good game against Seattle. It's just the rest of our offense didn't have a good game. But this is a tough matchup for sure. But hopefully they can make something happen. So we're going to talk about some of the individual players that I think we want to highlight. And Kyler wants, you mentioned our Cameron Jordan as one of the really good pass rushers. So talk a little bit about Cameron Jordan and what he means for them and your thoughts on him in this matchup.
Yeah, I think Cam Jordan's just historically been a force on that defense. I know he's a little bit down this year compared to maybe what we're used to, but that's saying something that we're used to such an elite level of play from him. I mean, just seeing 110 career sacks is, that's an elite guy that you're going against. And he, like Jordan P. said, he's a dog. And he's going to get to you. I know he hasn't been grading super well this year, but even then, 3.5 sacks, 26 tackles. He's just a great player. And DJ Humphries has been playing really well, so I want to give him credit. He's kind of coming back to that 2020 form where he looked really great. He looked elite even. But Cameron Jordan's also been good against Kyler Murray. I think he's sacked him twice in his career so far, and we've only played them that one time a couple of years ago. I just think he brings that veteran experience at that position that Chandler Jones brought to us for so long. And I know everyone was saying, "Oh, we're not going to miss him," but I think we missed Chandler Jones a little bit. You can see it on the field. They're just not as effective at the outside linebacker position as we're used to. And with the struggles that we do have at offensive line right now, I would expect Cameron Jordan to get to the quarterback. So he could definitely play a really disruptive role in this game if he starts to get a lot of pressure.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, I want to say to Ethan Hang, who just jumped in here, what have y'all discussed a lot? Quarterbacks, offensive line, defensive line, the signings. We discussed, as Calvin pointed out, we signed Hot Rod Rodrigo too. Love it. Yes, we did. So we talked about that. So yes. Kyler, I think you got to get out of here. I want to respect your time, but it was good having you back. We missed you, buddy. We'll see you again here. Anything you want to say before you hop out of here?
I just appreciate it. I love talking about Cardinals with you guys. I was glad to be back. Sorry that I have to bounce out a little bit early.
Awesome. Well, everyone follow Kyler. I believe I've got his links below. If I don't, I'll get them in there. You can check him out at azsportsunderground.com on Twitter. And we will see you next time, Mr. Bird.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
See ya. So, Troy, you wanted to discuss someone from the Cardinals, someone we talked about a little bit earlier that might have impact in this game, Rondale Moore. So why don't you talk a little bit about Moore here?
Yeah, so kind of like you alluded to earlier, the Saints secondary is the weak spot defensively. They're just, again, especially with Marshawn Lattimore out too, they're going to be it's the lowest graded part of their whole team is really their secondary. And I think Rondale Moore again has a chance to really just, if they use him effectively and use him, I hope, with just these short, quick throws, over the middle, and use his speed, and he'll have a really good matchup against these really not very. I mean, it's going to be the third best corner and an already not good secondary, and he needs a bounce back game. He had 2 drops. That fourth down one, it wasn't a good throw, it was behind him, but it hit him in the chest, so that's a drop. And then he had that one hit right off his hands. So I know we all very kind of was critical of him and his injury history. He always kind of seems to be out with hamstring injuries and stuff like that. But I mean, this talent is there. I think this kid is electric when he gets the ball in open field, and I think he'll be a very good part. And so, I mean, I really think the wide receivers in general are going to be a big part, but I chose Rondale Moore because he should have the biggest matchup or the easiest matchup, and he might not have the biggest stat line out of all of them, but I think he might have the most effective yards, and really just, I think he might be a key to get this offense going. And he's also the one he's probably the one with the most snaps at that point playing between D-Hop, right. Robbie Anderson, and him out there. So
yeah, for sure. And everyone's talking about, and we need to see more Dortch, as well. I think people may disagree with me on this. I think we need to stop trying to make it, I want Dortch instead of Rondale Moore. It's not instead of, it's an addition to. There's room for both of them. I hate to say it, but AJ Green's the guy we need to see less of in this offense. He's had a rough time. But yeah, I mean, there was a stat kind of graphic that's going around Twitter. It was shared in the Discord about how Dortch is leading the league in separation, that he generates. Now, some of them might be a little bit of a smaller sample size because he hasn't played in 2 games, but he's legitimately been doing that. He's getting open, and then they're not using him, and I don't know why. It baffles me. He was so good. Need to see more of him. We need to see Rondale more. We need to see both of them, and they need to, as tough as this offense it's been for this offense to get things going, I don't know why you're not playing the receiver who's playing so well for you.
If Rondale Moore has a couple more drops, then I think we will start seeing Dortch more, just because at the end of the day, like, you got one job, my guy. I think in that, it's so funny. Like, it was almost written in the stars, that JJ Watt clip debuted early in the week about him dropping a ball. It's like, you already know he's going to drop a key ball Sunday.
Right. I remember seeing that, and it's like, and it's like, oh man, and he dropped that really important one. And Paul points out, Rondale Moore was like 3rd or 4th on that list too. So they're both good receivers, and there's room in this offense for both of them, but they need to find a way to use them both for sure. I'm with you. Rondale Moore is so electric with the ball. I mean, if you look at his highlights, like there aren't many people who move like he does. The problem is staying healthy for him. And then lately the problem is how they've used him in the offense. But it's been getting a little better. He's got some catches that are on the right side of the correct side of the line of scrimmage, right? Drop AJ for Dortch, right? Yeah. It is tricky because I know AJ plays outside and Dortch is a slot receiver, but they can find ways to use them both. But the player I want to talk about is a player I'm concerned with. I think is, in terms of the offense, is the biggest, to me, the person that scares me the most on the Saints right now. for the Cardinals. It's actually Taysom Hill. We all know, I think Taysom Hill, he's their Swiss Army knife. He is a quarterback / tight end / running back / receiver. And probably does
a Renaissance man.
Right, true Renaissance man. I bet he makes a really mean sourdough bread too. Right.
Exactly.
They've been using him rushing the ball more than anything. You see, he has 38 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He has a couple receptions, but 267 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, a PFF running grade of 90.5, passing grade of 73.2. He's dangerous and he's a threat. And the thing that scares me about him in this game is he is a type of player that Isaiah Simmons is supposed to be able to handle. Yet at the same time, he is a type of player that Isaiah Simmons has struggled to handle. Isaiah Simmons has all the talent in the world, fast, strong, I think very smart, but you see too many plays where he just takes a misstep. I don't know if it's something with the instincts or just not up to speed where you see him take a misstep and then he's turning around going the other way and he's getting burnt. And that just Taysom Hill and all the gadgets that they run with him, it seems like he's the kind of player that Isaiah Simmons will be assigned to deal with, and the kind of player who can make Isaiah Simmons look bad. And that scares me.
1,000%. I mean, unfortunately, I have the image of Isaiah just looking like Bambi on skates against Travis Kelce that week 1. I can't unsee that. Even though Isaiah Simmons has been playing great. I mean, I thought he looked great in the Seattle game. He had that one beautiful pass breakup and really just I think he's kind of hitting his cylinders. But no, I agree. This is a major concern. I think the Taysom Hill, because it also seems like the Saints finally kind of figured out the Taysom Hill thing. I feel like he's not a Twitter meme anymore. Because now whenever I see highlights of him, he's getting loose and he's doing what exactly he was designed to do, and that's either he's big and he's fast and he is very physical. He'll run you right over. So no, I agree. This is an issue. Again, we contain Jalen Hurts for the most part, but again, they use him how they wanted to. He got 6 yards a carry and grinded out 4th and 1s over and over and over again. We could have the same situation again, which will not be fun.
Right, for sure. So this scares me. That's the matchup I'm actually most worried about going into this game. We'll see what happens. Want to quickly say hey to Arjun, who just dropped in. Greg Dortch also leads in catch percentage as of last week. Good to know. Yeah, he was having a hell of a season. Need to see more of him. So is there anything I want to this is the part where we kind of clear out the notebook, anything that we didn't get to talk about that you want to discuss, Troy?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of briefly alluded to this, and I think this is some of the keys of what is happening just league-wide in general. And we're all very frustrated with Cliff. Everyone, obviously, everyone has the very right to be, but as league-wide whole, offenses are down. QB play is down. A lot of these offensive gurus are struggling this year. Really, any kind of pass-heavy team is not doing well this year. Unfortunately, we are just on the bottom tier. We are very sensitive to that, and that is somewhat Cliff. But I mean, look at Green Bay. They aren't on the same page with Matt LaFleur, and Matt LaFleur is considered to be an offensive guru as well. The Rams are a mess right now, injury probably, and personnel related wise. But I mean, if you look at the top teams now, Buffalo kind of being the only outlier of a very pass heavy team, but some of the good teams right now are either more run focused or very balanced. The Vikings are up there, but I think they're a fake 5-1, as we probably all believe. I mean, I think they're decent, but I don't think they're 5-1 good. I mean, they almost lost to the Lions and they almost gave up a couple games. I mean, obviously the Giants, a big thing right now. They're 5-1, a little good, but guess what they do? They run the ball really well. And so all this is because defenses are playing cover 2 a lot. They're eliminating the deep passing. They're forcing you to run and do dink and dunk the whole way through. It's the topic of every kind of sports program at the moment. And again, I think we're seeing Cliff butt up against that, and he's not sure what to do. But it's a league-wide issue. So I think that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the reverberating effects from that. And usually, I mean, it's so to kind of counteract the cover twos, you got to either run the ball well because obviously the box is less congested, or just hit short little intermediate routes. That's why Seattle's offense was on fire, because they weren't really taking the deep shots as much. Geno's really good at hitting those over the middle of the field to his big physical wide receivers, which is what Russell Wilson doesn't like to do, and that's why Denver looks terrible. And also, like, the prince who was promised, Justin Herbert, he's not looking good either. So and that could be partly injury related, but it's not just Kyler. It's a lot of people not playing good football as well. Our man Larry, he was on he's on the Monday Night Crew, and he's talking about he didn't have much faith in us getting good or better this week, but I understood him.
I mean,
But we need to run the ball more, and that's what Cliff's like good at too. Like, again, we talked about the like offensive group or offensive analytic people say, like, that's what they actually say about Cliff Kingsbury, which that could be Sean Kugler thing, maybe or not. But they said like Cardinals' run game is actually pretty sophisticated and cool, but like we don't see it as much for whatever reasons. But so no, you're actually much more ingrained to the analytic part of it, Joe. You can take it away from here.
I haven't really dug into the analytics, but I certainly like that side of things. But it's just weird. Like the offense is down, and I felt this for weeks now, that I have felt like the problem with the Cardinals is that they have not adjusted to that well. Most teams haven't adjusted to it, but it seems like some teams have done a little bit better job, right? And it feels like the Cardinals haven't. So I'm a little bit torn on that. Like, there's part of me that says, oh crap, is this just something Cliff's offense cannot adjust to, and he can't adjust to, and he's just not going to work in this league? Or the inverse of that, or the flip side of that, is, okay, maybe we need to preach a little more patience, that everyone's trying to adjust, and let's just see what happens between now and the end of the season. And if they do adjust, then hopefully those adjustments will carry over into next year. And I'm torn on that, right? But everyone's struggling. We're not actually at the bottom of the league in offense. We're bottom third, but as bad as we've been, which feels crazy, as bad as it's been, that how could we not be ranked 31st or 32nd? But that's an issue. And I think you're right. Again, and I've used this term before, but market inefficiencies, when the pendulum swings a certain way, when offenses and defenses trend a certain way, coaches adjust, and and we've gone so pass heavy, right? The league has gone so pass heavy that defenses maybe have just kind of adjusted to that cover two that you can run on, knowing that teams have not been built to be equipped to run like that. And they're daring them to, right? And all these pass happy offenses that have been constructed that way, are struggling. And then you have those teams that are run heavy teams that are beating up those small linebackers. Like I think you brought up that point, a couple of streams ago, right? You've got all these teams with those small, fast linebackers who are struggling to stop the run. So I don't know. Real quick, Hans Sagan, thanks for being here. Sadly, if you can't throw over the middle, you're wrecked right now. Power run and use the read option. Kyler going to have to run, which he did, right? I was glad to see that. I know the fumble was bad, but he ran 10 times for 100 yards. I was glad to see him running. And the Cardinals running the ball earlier. Why they abandoned that, I don't know. But that was nice. But they need to, and I Jordan P's pointing out the offensive line, right? And if the O-line can't hold up enough just about the football with running backs, that was shown with after that first drive, all his runs, he was hit line of scrimmage or behind for Seattle. So they got to figure that out. for sure. But yeah,
I think
sorry,
we have some personnel issues that can, or personnel that can kind of more adapt. I mean, again, we now have Trey McBride and Zach Ertz, two good tight ends.
Mhm.
D Hop, who's like a very tall, physical. Obviously, we use him on the slant game. That's like a guaranteed 3 or 4 yards as D Hop on a slant, And I think we have a Cliff just kind of has to. Cliff's going to have to do what he did his first year, and that is completely adjust his offense, which that's what people praise Cliff for. He wasn't super stubborn. Like his first year, he went from, you know, um, like the air raid, 4 or 5 wide receiver or 4 wide receivers, and then he shifted to the double tight end formation, then running the ball more. That's why they got Kenyon Drake and that stuff. So he might have to do another renaissance of that and start relying more on the rookie Trey McBride, which is what you got him. And even then, I understand why maybe he's not in as much because he had a brutal false start penalty on him, and I was screaming at the TV. I'm like, "This is why you don't play, because like you screw this up." And so I think there's some wiggle room with their personnel to get more into that. It's just gonna have to take a gut check from Cliff and again, and then Kyler's got to shake this funk off. He's really got to come around because a lot of it is he's been bad. I mean, there's no getting around it. He's been bad this year. I think we're always a little hesitant to criticize him just because no one wants to hear that your franchise quarterback you just paid a lot of money to might be a dud, which I don't believe that. And Twitter quickly, some guy was like, who would take Kyler Murray's contract? And everyone on Twitter was like, a lot of teams would. Here's half the NFL that would sell their firstborn child to get Kyler Murray on their team. So the talent's there. I think this just has to be I don't know. I think Cliff might have to go.
Maybe. And I've been an apologist for Cliff for a long time, but I'm leaning. I mean, I'm not ready to fire him now, but if things don't change by the end of the season, I'm much more. With Kyler, listen, I know people are criticizing him and such. He's having a really bad year, but the arm talent is there. And he does special things with his legs. He's not playing well now, but we saw last year, for half the season, he played at an MVP level. He can do that in the right, the situation needs to be right. The offense needs to be right. The coach needs to be doing things right. But the talent is there. You absolutely can and should build around him. Right now, it's not been good, but yeah, I'm with you there. Want to respond? Han, you're mentioning 31st in yards per play. That's bottom. Now, there's a lot of measures of offense. We showed this earlier. The more usually when they talk about offensive ranks, they talk about yards a game. In yards per game, we're 16th. In points per game, we're 22nd. So that's where, when I say bottom third, that's where I'm referring to. Listen, we could list like 40 different stats, and some of them would have us higher, some are lower. But so that's where I'm referencing there, just as an FYI. But yeah, something's got to give, something's got to be different, right? I don't, but the only thing I guess I feel pretty strongly about is I want to see how the rest of the season plays out. I just don't think there's anything to gain by kicking the coach to the curb right now. Let's see if they can fix it, assess everything, see how everything worked out, give the players that are developing a chance to continue to develop under this current coaching staff, and then figure it out. Right.
Defense is good enough to keep us in most games. I mean, I think they've clearly have shown that. I mean, they've been good enough for us to win a lot of these games. We're almost there. But yeah, I don't see the point in firing Cliff at this very moment because, again, who else in that building is gonna take over offensive duties? There's no one. He's the only guy. Like, do you want Cam Turner or whatever, Norv Turner's son or nephew, whatever the passing game coordinator take over? Like, I don't have any confidence in that.
Yeah.
I trust Vance to take us through, but that's only half of the ball. So
yeah,
I don't know. We're just gonna have to hope. We're gonna have to hope in the good old combination of Kyler and D Hop playing backyard football to get us through a couple of these games and just keep us alive, and hopefully our defense can keep us engaged, which is, I know it's unfair. I can't imagine that locker room at the moment. I'm sure Vance and the whole defense just has to be looking across like, what are you guys doing over there? Like it's man, it's
Yeah,
gonna be a rough one.
absolutely. So yeah, and there's a lot to be frustrated by right now, but um I think I'm going to give us two questions to get out of here with. The first is, in general, do you still believe we can make a playoff appearance? Brass tacks, can we? Realistically.
Again, probably not, but on paper, and again, this is on paper, this offense is going to be, aside from the offense, which again, if we get Hudson and Cody Ford playing, this offense will be the same offense we had last year. Lighten it up on paper. Like, there's no reason why it shouldn't be. Obviously, we just talked about a million other reasons why it's not, a whole league wide shift in cover two and just kind of destroying our offensive flow. But again, NFC's bad too. I don't think we'll make it, but this team does exactly what the opposite of what you think it's going to do. So maybe if we all think they're going to suck, they will just do a U-turn on us and completely surprise us. Who knows? I mean, again, none of the NFC teams really look great other than the Eagles and Dallas. Other than that, I feel like it's kind of up there for anyone who wants to take it. And who knows? Maybe we'll turn it around. Probably not, but
like this team has the offensive talent to be good. Like, they have the playmakers. They have a quarterback who is capable of that. They have a defense that's playing at a level that can give them what they need complimentary wise. I do have concerns about the offensive system. Folks have talked about the college systems, and there aren't, college coaches aren't being successful in the league, right? They're just not. So I totally get that. And I have legitimate questions at this point about that offense. But we also saw that this offense was really good last year for a long stretch. Yes, those defensive changes that have happened this week maybe are going to prevent that. But where I'm going with it is this. There's the talent, but it hasn't worked. I do think this team has the potential to figure it out and flip the switch. Like that whatever they haven't figured out, I think it's possible they could figure out in one of these weeks, get that offense going. I'm not saying for sure it will happen. This is the week it could happen. I mean, Hopkins is back. This might be that. If that happens this week, if somehow they figure out whatever it is, those little things those little details they keep talking about, those things Cliff keeps saying they need to clean up, those things Kyler keeps saying, those little things they need to fix. If whatever it is they need to figure out, they figure out this week and come out and that offense looks good, yes, I think they can make a playoff appearance. But if they don't flip that switch, and if they don't flip it this week, then I think probably need to stop dreaming about playoffs for this year. So this is a pivotal week, but it's not just they need to eke out an ugly Thursday, an ugly Thursday night win. They need to we need to see that whatever it is that they weren't figuring out, they figured out. They need to turn that key, get that engine going. And if that doesn't happen, I'm not optimistic that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's a little unfair to hope that switch to flip this week on a Thursday when they've had no time to practice or do anything.
Yeah.
So I don't, but I agree. If it's not against the Vikings with the long week.
Yeah.
Again, but we're all operating on the assumption, if we go 2-5, it's done, which again, it's a good statistic. Sometimes statistics can be totally misleading, and this team has defied statistics in the negative way. Maybe one day it'll be the positive way. But no, if it's not in the next 2 weeks with D-Hop back and Robbie Anderson a little more involved, gelled in, then it's probably, I mean, again, Cliff doesn't sound like he's in the most confident of places at the moment, which is not really something you want to hear from your head coach. But if not, everyone just look at Jordan Addison highlights, USC wide receiver. He looks great.
You make a good point. So I think I will amend my position based on something you've said that made sense. they need to win games until they flip the switch. Like if they could eke out a win this game, but they have to flip the switch. They have to, if they can barely win games until they flip the switch, okay. But that switch has to flip because they're going to have to win a lot of games down the stretch, and they're not going to win a lot of games down the stretch if the offense isn't working, right? So they have to figure it out, and they can't lose games between now and figuring it out.
And you could see like an ugly win happening in this one because there's so many. Yeah, offense might not be great, but like D-Hop and just the good vibes and black uniforms, the black helmets, prime time. There might be just enough confluence, motivating factors just to give them over this finish line. Just to get them over, and then it could be a confidence builder. And then they can just start building off that and. Next thing you know, we're flying high, but yeah.
And and the division's bad. The division's bad, but they gotta win the division. I don't think there's gonna be a wild card coming out of the NFC West this year. So
no, probably not. No, because the NFC East, you got Dallas and Philly. The North would be Vikings.
Vikings. I think the Packers will get one. So I think you're going to see 2 wild cards come out of the East when it's all said and done, and then I think Vikings and Packers, whichever one doesn't win the division, will get a wild card.
Gotcha.
That's what based on that. That's what I think. We'll see. Obviously, things can change.
I mean, the Falcons are kind of chippy too. They could maybe steal one of those wild cards out of the South if they don't win the South. I mean,
yeah. I think they're gonna. I mean, I like what they're building there, but I don't think they're gonna be able to pull that off. But I said going into the season, I thought they'd be kind of a scrappy, chippy team, right?
They have a low ceiling, right? High floor, kind of low ceiling team. So I mean, again, that's this. I had this kind of my notes. This could be a take your medicine year, and we just gonna have to grit our teeth and get through it, unfortunately. But hey, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, fellas.
Let's hope it's not the oncoming train, as they say, right?
Oh, well, we've already been hit, rattled, and thrown through the fires after last week.
Right. Jason, thanks for being here. Appreciate you dropping in here. So the last question I want to go with here, sorry guys, anime deep in sleep. Okay. Keep up the good content. Thank you for that. We didn't do this last week, but score prediction for the game. I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't prep you for that, but hopefully you can.
No, it's I think 24-21 Cards.
Okay. I think that's a good score. I think that's a good prediction.
The lines 1.5 Cardinals are favored.
Believe it or not, they're favored, right? I'm keeping just a little bit of optimism, hoping they win this game. I know it's Thursday night, and Thursday night games are just low scoring affairs. But I'm gonna say we have. Maybe I'm just speaking out of optimism here. I'm gonna say like 27-17. I'm gonna say our defense does a good job again, and our offense gets something going, and maybe we get a defensive score in there, right? So I'm gonna be optimistic.
Our offense needs to show life. I mean, if you perform that badly on a Sunday and just have like no life again the next week, that's really, really troubling. And Cliff, if we look really bad again, then I'm saying Cliff doesn't make it through the year. I know we talked last time that none of us thought Cliff was going to get fired, barring any scandal or anything like that. I'm going to amend that and say if the offense continues the trend it's going, but we'll have no force or have no choice but to do it. I'm not saying soonish, but I don't think he makes it out because at that point, Kyler's regressing. Your franchise quarterback is going backwards, and that's a very troubling and not a good thing. that you're stuck with, because you're stuck with Kyler for the next 4 years. I mean, you can trade him, sure, but I mean, you're kind of married to him, and you can't be damaging a very long-term asset for your company. And it's just embarrassing. Like, you go out there and every, primetime games, their stadium half filled or 3/4 filled with away fans. Like, again, we talked about this. He cares deeply about this team. We know this. He wants to win. Like, he's not going to stand for this if it keeps going the way it's going. So, back against the wall, these guys have to put up or get gone.
Yeah. I do not think Michael Bidwell will fire him midseason if he's going to fire him. I think Bidwell, I mean, listen, he just signed to an extension. That I know people say, well, so what? But like, I think Bidwell, when he's sitting there pondering this, is going to say, I just signed this major extension with this coach. Yes, things are going badly, but because of that, I want to wait till the end of the season when I can step away, take some time to think about everything, let things cool down, and make a decision that's not a rash decision. I just think that's where
sign him for more years.
Right, and sign him for more. But so I think that's the headspace he's going to be in, and I just don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to let himself fire a coach midseason who he just signed a big extension. I think because of what he's invested in that, I think he's going to want to sit down and take some time after the season to clear his head and make that careful decision. I could be wrong, obviously, but I feel like it's not going to happen mid-season if it happens. But we'll see, right?
An interesting thing is, before we go, Gambo from AZ Sports, him and Dave Burton said they would bet they're like a mortgage payment that Vance Joseph is the next Arizona Cardinals head coach. He's been the next guy to take it. And Gambo's kind of dialed in. I'm wondering if he's hearing rumblings already, because surprisingly, I thought that was going to be a more popular take, that he would wait till the end. But I mean, maybe it's just the media thing trying to, strum up a little controversy. But they were all very in the camp that Cliff probably is not going to make it throughout the season, which I kind of thought was a little surprising. But
yeah,
again, we'll see. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
I agree. There's nothing to gain from doing it in midseason. You're throwing in the towel for the season essentially, and
yeah,
you might have one or two rousing wins, whatever, and we'll ruin someone's playoff hopes, and that will be like the crowning achievement of our season.
And that's and it's interesting because I thought about Vance Joseph as a coach. You think everyone is going for offensive coaches, but I don't know. Maybe part of that pendulum swing is that you go, maybe it's a time to go for not, going after that young kind of wunderkid kind of, offensive, whiz, and go for more, the best coach you can find, defense or otherwise. Maybe this is the shift, and maybe like Vance Joseph struggled in Denver, but he's done a good job with the defense here. Who knows, right? Bring a conventional offensive coordinator on, build a running game, more of a West Coast style offense or something more conventional. Maybe we see that. Yeah. I don't know.
That's a very existential question. I mean, I think the spirit of the thing was saying they don't think Cliff's going to make it through the year and Vance is going to be the interim.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Yeah, we're talking about the pendulum swings. Is defensive guys going to start to? I mean, Sean McDermott, again, outlier for a couple of reasons, but he's a defensive guy. And Bills are flying high, and Brian Dable's not there. And guess what? They're still putting out fantastic results. So, it's interesting. But then Eberflus is getting torched in Chicago. So, you can pick data points wherever you want them.
Yeah, I mean, see, they got to be a good coach. A good coach is going to be a good coach, right? And so that ultimately, and they'll find a way. So, well, we've got an hour and 38 minutes. It's been a great conversation. We could keep going, but we're not going to go all night. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for being here. If I didn't get to your comments, I apologize. Can't get to everything, but thank you all for hanging out with us. Make sure you follow Troy. His Twitter handle is in the description. Make sure you're subscribed to the Cardinal Rule. Make sure you check out azsportsunderground.com. Troy, why don't you go ahead and throw a shout out for Four Peaks, since I jokingly or not jokingly called them Twin Peaks last week. I think I owe you at least that. Give us a shout out.
No, yeah. So yeah, Four Peaks. That's where I work for. Do a lot of the social media from them. Obviously, we have Redbird Lager, which is I guess the official beer of Arizona Cardinals. I'm not sure actually, but 20 or older, drink responsibly. Have that in there. And yeah, again, great place to watch the games. Again, Suns. Again, for AZ Sports in general, Suns. Season starts tomorrow. Just snuck up on us, but we're already back at it. So again, great destination. Good beer, all that good stuff. So yeah,
awesome.
Thanks again for having me on. I love doing these. These are so much fun.
Yeah, I'm good. It's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying working with you. So obviously we'll keep doing this. So everyone, enjoy the game. Here's hoping we get a good result from this game. Thank you again for everyone hanging out. We will see. I'm going to be doing a post game on my channel after the game Thursday, and supposed to be doing a pregame on the He's on Fire podcast YouTube channel with Coach Evan B and with Jackie. So definitely check that out. Thank you all. We're going to get out of here. I'm going to throw a shout out up for the channel members who support the channel. But until next time, peace.